Life is not without moments that make us feel tired, worried, and confused. Every day, we carry so many burdens in our hearts, from thoughts we haven't fully understood to worries about the future and unfinished things. The soul feels like a heavy stone, unable to breathe lightly. In those moments, perhaps we forget something important. We can let go so our soul can be free and at ease. The Buddha's teaching on letting go is a precious treasure, not just for those seeking profound enlightenment, but for all of us, ordinary people living in the busyness of life. The Buddha teaches that when we do not cling to material things, relationships, or negative emotions, we will find peace. This peace does not come from running away from difficulties, but from accepting them, letting go of tension, and knowing that everything in life is impermanent. The Buddha's teachings on letting go are not abstract advice, far away, but a very practical practice in life. Letting go is the way to prevent worries, disappointments, or anger from occupying our soul. Letting go is learning to live more gently, not to avoid difficulties, but to face them calmly and wisely. In moments of exhaustion, when we feel that life is too heavy, remember the Buddha's words: let go to find peace, to feel lightness and tranquility within ourselves. Because in letting go, there is liberation for the soul, the path that leads us to true peace. Not every time can we clearly explain the origin of fatigue. Sometimes a heavy mood does not come from any specific event, but from the gradual accumulation of worries, sadness, and unrelieved emotions. Even though everything around us may still seem peaceful, the familiar sounds of life, like birds singing, the breeze passing by, or the soft light of the morning, cannot dispel the weight in our hearts. We may find everything around us fine, but deep inside, there is a sense of lostness that is hard to describe. That is when exhaustion is not just a physical feeling, but a state of the soul slowly losing its peace. The Buddha teaches that the human soul can become entangled in many things that are not worth it, and these entanglements are the greatest burden we carry every day. Concerns about the past, worries about the future, or negative emotions like regret, anger, or even greed can make us feel an invisible exhaustion. Our soul is like a container, and if we don't know how to let go, everything will accumulate, becoming heavy and uncomfortable. And sometimes, these things make us lose our inner peace, making it impossible to find tranquility, no matter how peaceful the outside world may seem. When we cannot let go of unnecessary things, the mind becomes a mess, constantly immersed in thoughts, worries, and unstable emotions. The Buddha teaches that in order to free ourselves from anxiety, we need to learn to understand and accept the impermanence of life. Everything changes. Everything has a beginning and an end. Therefore, when we let go of things that cannot be changed, we will find freedom, a deep freedom that can only be felt when we live fully in the present. One of the reasons our mood becomes heavy is because we do not live fully in the present moment. When we are immersed in the memories of the past or worry about the future, our soul is no longer free to enjoy what is happening right in front of us. Sometimes, all we need to do is stop for a moment, take a deep breath, and feel our presence in every moment. Because only when we live fully in the present, all worries and negative emotions will gradually fade away, and in the stillness of the soul, we will find peace. Buddhist teachings remind us that all suffering comes from clinging to things that do not truly bring happiness to us. Every time we cannot let go of unnecessary things, we create an invisible chain for ourselves, preventing us from escaping the bonds of emotions and thoughts. These bonds make our mind unable to be free, unable to live in the present moment. Therefore, the Buddha teaches that to escape the exhaustion of life, we need to learn to let go, to live more lightly, and to seek peace within ourselves. Letting go does not mean we are avoiding life, but learning to face it calmly. Letting go is acceptance, understanding that everything changes, and when we no longer cling to what is past or what cannot be controlled, we will feel lightness in our souls. The feeling of exhaustion will no longer be a burden, but an opportunity for us to pause, reflect on ourselves, and find peace. We need to remember that life will not always be easy, and fatigue is an unavoidable part of that journey. However, instead of letting it control us, we should learn to be aware of those emotions, not avoid or force ourselves to be happy. Let those emotions come and go naturally, like a light breeze passing by. And when we let go of negative emotions, that is when the soul will be liberated and become peaceful. Therefore, learn to live more gently, so that each step in life is no longer heavy, but firm, free, and filled with peace. Letting go is not an easy task, but it is the path that leads to freedom and true happiness, the path that takes us to a meaningful and peaceful life. In life, there are things we strive to hold on to, not because they bring happiness anymore, but because they have become inseparable parts of our lives. Old relationships, emotions that are no longer whole, or habits that have become too familiar, all create an invisible bondage in our minds. To live peacefully and freely, we need to realize an important truth. Letting go is not about giving up, but about stopping to hold on to things that no longer serve us, so that our souls can find tranquility. The Buddha teaches that letting go is not a negative action, nor is it failure or surrender. In fact, letting go is an act of freedom, an action that helps us remove what is no longer useful, what no longer brings value, to create space for new things, for true peace and happiness. When we learn to let go, it is not only about abandoning material things, but also about letting go of thoughts, emotions, and relationships that have become outdated and no longer meet our spiritual needs. It is at that moment that our souls are truly freed from attachments, allowing us to experience serenity, lightness, and peace. We often think that holding on to things will prevent us from feeling deprived, or will create a sense of stability and safety. However, holding on to what no longer fits is one of the main causes of fatigue, stress, and feelings of being stuck. Our souls become heavy because their space is occupied by things that no longer hold value. The Buddha teaches that life is impermanent, everything changes, and nothing lasts forever. Therefore, when we try to hold tightly to things from the past, we not only cause suffering for ourselves, but also miss the opportunity to embrace new, better things. In Buddhist teachings, letting go is the first step towards freedom. We can imagine our soul as a container. If the container is full, no more water can be poured in. But if the container is cleaned and has space, water can flow in, and it will be fresher and cooler. Likewise, when we let go of unnecessary things, our souls become open to new, positive ideas and emotions. Only then can we feel peace in every moment and live fully with what is present. Letting go is not about separation or avoidance, but about accepting that life has changes we cannot control. The important thing is not trying to hold on to what is past, but living with a peaceful heart to receive whatever comes. When we let go, we not only cleanse our soul, but also create a large space to accept love, peace, and happiness in life. Letting go is also how we learn to love ourselves. Sometimes we are too harsh on ourselves, always placing ourselves under the expectations and pressures that society or others impose on us. These expectations make us feel always lacking, always not enough, and therefore we can never experience peace. The Buddha teaches that only when we love ourselves, when we let go of judgment and unnecessary worries, can we truly live happily. Loving oneself is not about making oneself the center of everything, but about appreciating ourselves, forgiving ourselves, and allowing ourselves to live in freedom without being bound by unnecessary things. The necessity of letting go lies in the fact that when we do, we gain freedom. Not the freedom that many people think of, freedom from responsibility or duty, but the freedom in the soul, the freedom to live true to ourselves, the freedom to love and care for ourselves without worrying about things that no longer belong to us. When we let go, we not only liberate ourselves, but we also open up opportunities for good things to come into our lives. In this busy life, letting go is not an easy practice, but it is the key to opening the door to peace. Remember that letting go is not about giving up, but about allowing the soul to be free, to live in every moment fully. When we learn to let go of what no longer serves us, what no longer brings happiness, the soul will be light, peaceful, and full of life. Only then can we live fully with what life offers, not being controlled by the past, not worrying about the future, but living in the present, living in peace and happiness. There are times when we frequently have to face challenges and feelings of exhaustion, not only from busy work, but also from anxieties and negative emotions that we sometimes cannot immediately identify. In such moments, many people feel as if everything is passing by meaninglessly and helplessly. But are all these difficulties caused by external circumstances, or is it our own mind that is leading us? The mind leads all things, as the Buddha taught, which serves as an important reminder of the powerful influence of consciousness on our lives. The mind is the root of all actions and thoughts, and it is these thoughts that create the reality we experience. If we let our minds be immersed in worry, anger, or resentment, our lives will always be a series of painful days. But if we know how to let go of our anxieties and forgive the wounds of the past, our souls will find true peace and freedom. Imagine a young mother named Lan. She works tirelessly every day to nurture her young child, but despite her best efforts, she cannot avoid worries about finances, inadequate meals, and the stress of life. The frequent feeling of disappointment makes Lan feel as though she is living in a never-ending loop with no way out. However, one day, when she sat down and listened to the Buddha's teachings, she realized that it was her own negative thoughts that were dragging her down, not the circumstances. Lan began to change her perspective, no longer seeing poverty as the determinant of her happiness. She started learning how to breathe deeply, let go of negative thoughts, and instead focus on the peaceful moments in her small life, such as her son's smile or the warm light of dawn. Lan's story is a testament to the truth that suffering originates from the way we think. The Buddha teaches that when our minds no longer cling to things that cannot be changed, when we no longer hold tightly to negative emotions, only then can we free ourselves from the chains of suffering. Letting go is not about abandoning circumstances or accepting failure, but about letting go of outdated thoughts and emotions that no longer serve us. We often hear the saying, when one door closes, another opens. But the truth is, if we do not let go, if we do not give up, we will not be able to see the new door. Only when our souls are at peace, when we can see the world around us with eyes no longer clouded by sorrow and worry, can we experience true freedom. This does not mean that life will no longer present challenges. On the contrary, challenges will still appear, but we will no longer be controlled by them. Like Lan's story, when she learned to change her thinking, her life did not become easier, but she was able to face every difficulty with a peaceful and gentle attitude. She learned how to let the mind not lead all negative things, but to guide every action and thought with wisdom and peace. The Buddha pointed out that all suffering originates from attachment and the inability to let go. This is evident in relationships. When we love someone, but do not accept change, do not accept the impermanence of life, we easily fall into suffering. But if we can love without attachment, without clinging, we will have a free, gentle, and peaceful love. Similarly, in work, we may have great goals and desires for success. However, if we do not know how to let go of failure, if we do not accept failure as a part of life, we will never be able to move forward. Learning to let go is learning to accept failure and continue persevering without letting our minds be burdened by things that no longer matter. This life is full of surprises and the unexpected, but once we learn how to let go of things that cannot be changed, we will find the strength to overcome any challenge. Remember that happiness is not a destination but a journey. When we know how to let go, our souls will open up and we will experience peace in the present moment. Therefore, allow yourself to relax, let go, and embrace everything with a gentle and peaceful heart. Because when the mind is at peace, everything will naturally find its solution. All of us have carried the past, memories, sadness, and even past joys. What is past often carries great weight, like invisible stones pressing on our hearts. We carry memories like burdens, feelings of regret over what was lost, wrong choices, or feelings that no longer remain intact. But in the teachings of Buddhism, there is an important lesson we need to learn. Let go of the past to live fully in the present. We often think that holding on to the past will help us not forget what we have been through, keep the beautiful memories, and protect relationships that were once very important. However, according to the Buddha's teachings, when we do not let go of the past, we not only hold on to beautiful memories, but also keep sadness, regret, and unnecessary suffering. This prevents our souls from being free and light, unable to embrace the new things that life brings. The Buddha teaches that the past cannot be changed. Everything that has passed is impermanent, things that cannot be clung to, and cannot live forever in those memories. Holding on to the past is merely a waste of energy and mind, preventing us from living fully in the present. Letting go of the past is the way to liberate ourselves, to allow the soul to be at peace, light, and free. There is a simple yet profound story in Buddhism, the story of a falling leaf. When the time comes, a leaf will gradually fall to the ground. As it falls, it does not cling to the tree branch. It does not regret its past, nor does it fear the future. It simply falls, following the natural cycle. The leaf does not resist change. It accepts and allows itself to be free. This is the perfect image of letting go, accepting everything that has passed, holding on to nothing, and letting it fall freely. We too need to learn to let go of the past like the falling leaf. The past cannot be changed, but the present and future are still in our hands. Holding on to the past only causes us to miss out on opportunities and precious moments in life. The Buddha teaches that when we no longer cling to what has passed, our souls will become lighter and freer, ready to embrace the new things that life brings. Letting go is not about forgetting what has passed, but learning to accept and live fully with what is present. When we accept that the past is gone and cannot return, we will more easily open our hearts to embrace the present. This does not mean that we forget the lessons of the past, but that we do not allow them to dominate our present life. Let's learn to love ourselves, forgive ourselves, and free ourselves from the burdens of the past. The story of the falling leaf is a wonderful illustration of letting go. The leaf never thinks about its attachment to the tree branch, never thinks about how it will fall. It simply falls naturally, in accordance with the cycle of life. It does not regret the past, nor worry about the future. It simply lives in the present moment in the most natural way. So, why can't we do the same as the leaf? Why can't we accept that everything has an ending? We need to learn to accept the impermanence of life, so we don't hold on to what has passed, so that those things do not take up space in our souls. When we let go of the past, we will see that life is full of new opportunities and joys awaiting us. The Buddha teaches that only when we truly let go will the soul be free. We don't need to worry about what has passed. We don't need to keep painful memories or regrets. When we live in the present, no longer controlled by the past, we will feel peace in our souls and enjoy life more fully. Therefore, let's learn to let go like the falling leaf, to let what no longer serves us fall freely, and allow our souls to become lighter and more peaceful. Let the past be a part of life, but don't let it control the present. When we let go, we will find freedom, peace in our souls, and live fully with every moment of life. Suffering is an inseparable part of every person's life. All of us will go through difficult times, painful emotions, and unavoidable sorrows. It could be loss, betrayal, or simply feeling lost in life. Suffering sometimes comes unexpectedly, making us feel like we are being crushed, losing direction and strength. However, in Buddhist teachings, suffering is not something we need to avoid or reject, but something we need to understand and accept, so it does not control our lives. The Buddha teaches that suffering is impermanent, a part of the cycle of life and death. Everything in life has a beginning and an end, and so does suffering. The important thing is that we learn to face it, rather than running away or denying it. When we understand that suffering is a natural part of life, we will no longer fear or feel powerless when it comes. Instead, we can see suffering as an opportunity to grow, to explore deeper aspects of ourselves and of life. Suffering, whether caused by external or internal factors, can teach us valuable lessons. In difficult times, when our souls are crushed and in pain, we often seek ways to avoid or run from these feelings. However, the Buddha teaches that instead of running away, we should face it calmly and accept it. When we dare to face it and acknowledge it, we will understand that suffering is not something that lasts forever. It comes and then it goes, and what matters is what we learn from it, rather than letting it control and dominate our lives. When facing suffering, we need to nurture compassion and patience. Compassion is not only for others, but also for ourselves. When we face difficulties, sometimes we blame ourselves, torment ourselves for past mistakes, or for being unable to change circumstances. But at that moment, we need to open our hearts to ourselves, forgive ourselves, and realize that these difficulties and mistakes are just a part of our journey. When we know how to love and empathize with ourselves, we will more easily overcome suffering and view it with a calm attitude, without worry or fear. One more thing the Buddha teaches about suffering is the acceptance of its impermanence. Nothing in life is eternal, and neither is suffering. Only when we understand that everything changes, that every emotion, every event, and every mental state can disappear, can we calmly face suffering. When we do not cling to negative emotions, when we do not hold on to pain, suffering will no longer control our minds. The Buddha teaches that suffering can only exist when we cling to it, when we allow it to control our minds. But when we know how to let go, when we know that the pain will pass, the soul will become more peaceful, and we will no longer be ruled by suffering. Suffering is also an opportunity for us to practice mindfulness, an important method in Buddhism. Mindfulness helps us live in the present moment, not letting the past or future control our minds. When facing suffering, instead of allowing it to pull us into a spiral of anxiety and insecurity, we can breathe deeply, focus on our breath, and observe the painful sensations without judging or avoiding them. This will help us realize that the feeling of suffering is just a temporary phenomenon in the body and mind, and when we do not react to it, it will naturally pass. An example of facing suffering as taught in Buddhism is the story of a woman named Lan. She is a single mother, living alone with her son in a small house. Lan always feels tired from the hardships of life, always worried about the future and work. One day, she went to meet a teacher to seek advice on how to face the difficulties in her life. The teacher told her, "You cannot avoid hardships, but you can change the way you perceive them. When you learn to accept that life involves suffering, you will find peace in your soul. You do not need to avoid or fear suffering, but face it like a friend, and you will see that it no longer controls you." Lan followed the teacher's advice, and as she learned to accept suffering, not allowing it to control her mind, she felt lighter. She realized that suffering was not something to avoid, but something to understand and face. When she let go of worry and fear, she found peace within herself and could live happily, even though life still had many challenges. So, instead of letting suffering control our lives, let us learn to face it, understand it, and accept it as part of life. When we are not afraid of suffering, when we view it with compassion and mindfulness, we will see that suffering is no longer a burden, but an opportunity for us to grow and mature. In this life, we often encounter hurt, things that don't go as expected, words or actions that break our hearts. Sometimes, these pains are not caused by others, but by our own expectations, by holding ourselves captive to mistakes we cannot forgive ourselves for. That feeling, if not let go, will last and become a burden in our souls. Accepting ourselves and forgiving ourselves is the key to freeing ourselves from those burdens, to letting our souls be light and free. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting or overlooking what has happened. Forgiveness is not about yielding, but about freeing the soul from negative emotions, opening our hearts to embrace peace. There is a story about a man named Min. Min is a disciplined and ambitious person. He always wants everything to be perfect, from work to relationships, and especially in how he faces himself. Min always feels like a failure when he does not meet the high standards he sets for himself. The feeling of dissatisfaction with himself, unable to forgive the small mistakes in life, made Min increasingly stressed and tired. He did not dare to face his true feelings, always hiding them behind a mask of resilience. One day, Min met an old friend who had once shared life lessons with him. The friend told Min, "Life is not always perfect. Learn to accept yourself, forgive what is past. If you don't, you will always live in an endless storm of anxiety that never stops." That statement struck Min's heart. He realized that he had lived too long in an endless race, always seeking perfection without stopping to recognize the true values in life and within himself. With the support of his friend, Min began to learn how to forgive himself. He no longer obsessed over mistakes, no longer tormented himself over wrong decisions. He understood that every mistake is a valuable lesson, and they are not the end, but ellipses that allow us to learn and grow. Accepting himself, loving himself, was how Min found peace in his soul. Gradually, Min learned to relax, no longer forcing himself to be a perfect model. He opened his heart to embrace new challenges, new opportunities, and most importantly, he learned to forgive, not only others, but also himself. Min's story is a testament that forgiveness is not about giving up, but about an act of liberation. When we forgive, we are not ignoring mistakes, but choosing not to let them take over our lives. Forgiveness is a process of freeing the soul from the constraints of the past so that we can live more fully in the present. Self-acceptance and forgiveness are also important lessons in building good relationships. It is difficult to love and accept others when we cannot do so with ourselves. Sometimes, conflicts in relationships arise simply because we cannot forgive each other, cannot accept imperfections and differences. But when we learn to forgive and open our hearts, we will find that relationships become lighter, more sincere, and more connected. Every relationship has its challenges, and when we forgive, we not only free ourselves, but also free others, helping them find peace in their souls. Sometimes we will encounter things that do not go as we wish, but the important thing is how we face them. If we always cling to past wounds and cannot forgive, we will always be pulled backward. But if we learn to accept ourselves, forgive, and let go, we will find the strength to move forward, no longer feeling heavy, no longer feeling trapped in the past. Truly, forgiveness is a powerful act of love. It is how we care for our souls so that we can live fully in the present. Life is a long journey with many challenges and events. But each time we learn to accept and forgive, we will see that everything becomes lighter. We will no longer be burdened by past wounds and sufferings, and instead, we will have an open soul, a loving heart, and a life filled with peace. Forgiveness is not weakness, but the strength to take control of our lives. Let your soul be freed, let love be free, and let all good things come to you in tranquility and peace. In this busy and ever-changing life, we often seek peace outside, in relationships, in work, in material things, or even in a peaceful place. However, the Buddha teaches that peace does not come from changing circumstances, but from living in awareness and self-acceptance. This means that peace is not a condition of the external world, but an internal state of the soul, nurtured by understanding and deep self-awareness. Mindfulness, or awareness in every moment, is the key to achieving peace in life. When we live in mindfulness, we are not caught up in thoughts about the past or worries about the future. Each present moment becomes a precious gift that we can fully enjoy. This does not mean that we do not have worries or difficulties in life, but it is how we face and handle them. Mindfulness helps us not to be swept away by negative emotions or automatic reactions, but instead, we can observe them objectively, understand them, and choose to respond calmly. Peace, according to the Buddha, is a state of the soul where we are no longer controlled by negative emotions like anger, ignorance, and greed. When the soul achieves peace, it becomes still, no longer disturbed by the worries and anxieties of life. However, to achieve this peace, the important thing is not to change external circumstances, but to change the way we perceive and face the world around us. If we cannot live in mindfulness, we will not be able to realize the peace that life offers, no matter how many good things are happening around us. One of the valuable lessons in Buddhist teachings is self-acceptance. We often easily accept and love others, but it is difficult for us to accept ourselves with all our flaws, mistakes, and imperfections. However, the Buddha teaches that in order to have peace, we need to learn to love and accept ourselves, not just the good things, but also our shortcomings. Self-acceptance does not mean we compromise with our mistakes or weaknesses, but it means recognizing that all of this is part of the process of growth and perfection. When we can accept ourselves, we will no longer feel guilty or inferior, and instead, we will feel lighter and freer in life. Mindfulness in every moment helps us realize that all emotions, whether joy or sadness, are temporary. They come and go like waves on the sea. When we live in mindfulness, we do not cling to emotions. We do not let them control our lives. Instead of fearing or reacting to negative emotions, we learn to recognize and observe them without judgment. When we view life with such mindfulness, we will see that peace is not something far away, but a state that can be easily achieved, right in every present moment. To better understand this, let's imagine a person meditating. In that moment, the person does not need to do anything else except breathe, feeling each breath coming in and out of the body. Thoughts and worries may still come, but instead of letting them carry away, the meditator simply observes them without being affected. When the person accepts that these thoughts are a natural part of the mind and does not need to react to them, they will experience stillness and peace from within. Peace, here, is not the absence of all worries, but the ability to recognize them without being influenced by them. Self-acceptance is an important part of nurturing peace. The Buddha teaches that only when we know how to love and accept ourselves can we truly love and empathize with others sincerely. When we no longer feel guilty or ashamed of ourselves, we will no longer allow negative emotions to control our relationships or actions. This is freedom, the freedom from within, not brought about by external circumstances. A story in Buddhism can clearly illustrate this. A disciple came to the Buddha and asked, "How can I achieve peace in life?" The Buddha replied, "To have peace, you must learn to let go and live in mindfulness. When you learn to be aware of yourself, no longer feeling shame or inferiority, you will see that peace is not something distant. It is already within each of us, in every moment." In modern life, we often get caught up in worries about the future, expectations of ourselves, or societal relationships. But if we do not learn to live mindfully and accept ourselves, we will never find true peace. Peace is not a destination, but a state of the soul that we can experience in every second of life. When we live fully with ourselves, when we understand and accept ourselves, we will feel peace and freedom in our soul. And from that, life will become more meaningful and happier. In everyday life, we often face challenges and feelings of exhaustion, not only from busy work, but also from anxieties and negative emotions that sometimes we cannot immediately identify. At such times, many people may feel as if everything is passing by meaninglessly and helplessly. But is all this difficulty caused by external circumstances, or is it our own mind leading us? The mind leads all things, as the Buddha teaches, which is an important reminder of the powerful influence of consciousness on our lives. The mind is the root of all actions and thoughts, and it is these thoughts that create the reality we experience. If we let our minds become immersed in worry, anger, or resentment, our lives will always be a series of painful days. But if we know how to let go of worries, forgive past wounds, the soul will find true peace and freedom. A young mother named Lan works tirelessly every day to support her young child. But despite her efforts, she cannot avoid worries about finances, insufficient meals, and the stress of life. The frequent feeling of disappointment makes Lan feel like she is living in a never-ending loop with no way out. However, one day, when she sat down and listened to the Buddha's teachings, she realized that it was her negative thoughts that were pulling her down, not the circumstances. Lan began to change the way she viewed things, no longer seeing poverty as the determinant of her happiness. She began learning to breathe deeply, let go of negative thoughts, and instead focus on the peaceful moments in her small life, such as her son's smile or the warm light of dawn. Lan's story is a testament to the truth that suffering originates from the way we think. The Buddha teaches that when our minds no longer cling to things that cannot be changed, when we no longer hold on to negative emotions, we can free ourselves from the chains of suffering. Letting go is not about abandoning circumstances or accepting failure, but about letting go of outdated thoughts and emotions that no longer serve us. We often hear the saying, when one door closes, another opens. But the truth is, if we do not let go, if we do not surrender, we will not be able to see the new door. Only when our soul is at peace, when we can see the world around us with eyes no longer clouded by sorrow and anxiety, will we experience true freedom. This does not mean that life will no longer have challenges. On the contrary, challenges will still arise, but we will no longer be controlled by them. Like Lan's story, when she learned to change her thoughts, her life did not become easier, but she could face every difficulty with a peaceful, gentle attitude. She learned how to keep her mind from leading all negative things, instead guiding every action and thought with wisdom and peace. The Buddha pointed out that all suffering comes from attachment and the inability to let go. This is clearly seen in relationships. When we love someone but do not accept change, do not accept the impermanence of life, we easily fall into suffering. But if we can love without attachment, without clinging, we will have a love that is free, gentle, and full of peace. Similarly, in work, we may have lofty goals and a strong desire for success. However, if we do not know how to let go of failure, if we do not accept failure as part of life, we will never move forward. Learning to let go is learning to embrace failure and continue persevering, without letting the mind be burdened by things that no longer matter. This life is full of surprises and the unexpected. But once we learn to let go of things that cannot be changed, we will find the strength to overcome all challenges. Remember, happiness is not a destination, but a journey. When we know how to let go, our souls will open and we will feel peace in the present moment. Therefore, allow yourself to relax, let go, and embrace everything with a gentle and peaceful heart. For when the mind is at peace, everything will naturally find a way to resolve. There are many times when we face wounds, things that do not go as expected, words or actions that break our hearts. Sometimes, this pain is not caused by others, but from high expectations, from locking ourselves in mistakes we cannot forgive ourselves for. If this feeling is not let go, it will continue and become a burden on our souls. Self-acceptance and forgiveness are the keys to freeing ourselves from these burdens, allowing our souls to be light and free. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting or overlooking what has happened. Forgiveness is not yielding, but freeing the soul from negative emotions, opening our hearts to embrace peace. There is a story about a man named Min. Min is a very disciplined and ambitious person. He always wanted everything to be perfect, from work to relationships, and especially in how he faced himself. Min always felt like a failure when he didn't meet the high standards he set for himself. The dissatisfaction with himself, being unable to forgive small mistakes in life, made Min increasingly stressed and exhausted. He did not dare face his true emotions, always hiding them under a layer of resilience. One day, Min met an old friend who had shared life lessons with him. His friend told Min, "Life is not always perfect. Learn to accept yourself, forgive what is past. Otherwise, you will always live in an endless storm of anxiety." That statement struck Min's heart. He realized that he had lived too long in an endless race, always seeking perfection without stopping to recognize the true values in life and within himself. With his friend's support, Min began learning how to forgive himself. He no longer obsessed over mistakes, no longer tormented himself over wrong decisions. He understood that each mistake was a valuable lesson, and they were not the end, but ellipses that allowed us to learn and grow. Accepting himself, loving himself, was how Min found peace in his soul. Gradually, Min learned how to relax, no longer forcing himself to be a perfect model. He opened his heart to embrace new challenges, new opportunities, and most importantly, he learned to forgive. Not only others, but also himself. Min's story is a testament that forgiveness is not giving up, but an act of liberation. When we forgive, we are not ignoring mistakes, but choosing not to let them take over our lives. Forgiveness is a process of freeing the soul from the chains of the past, so we can live more fully in the present. Self-acceptance and forgiveness are also important lessons in building good relationships. It is hard to love and accept others when we cannot do that with ourselves. Sometimes, conflicts in relationships arise just because we cannot forgive each other, cannot accept flaws and differences. But when we learn to forgive and open our hearts, we will see relationships becoming lighter, more sincere, and more connected. Every relationship has its challenges, and when we forgive, we not only free ourselves, but also free others, helping them find peace in their souls. Sometimes we will face things that do not go as we wish, but the important thing is how we face them. If we always cling to old wounds, unable to forgive, we will always be pulled back. But if we learn to accept ourselves, forgive, and let go, we will find the strength to move forward, no longer feeling heavy, no longer feeling trapped in the past. Truly, forgiveness is a powerful act of love, a way of caring for our souls so that we can live fully in the present. Life is a long journey with many challenges and events. But each time we learn to accept and forgive, we will see everything become lighter. We will no longer be burdened by old wounds, old sufferings, but instead we will have an open soul, a loving heart, and a life full of peace. Forgiveness is not weakness, but the strength to take control of our lives. Let your soul be freed, let love be free, and let all good things come to you in tranquility and peace. In the fast-paced rhythm of today's world, sometimes we feel caught in an endless whirlpool. Work, family, friends, responsibilities, all create heavy pressure, leaving us with no time to stop and breathe. This feeling at times feels like an unstoppable storm, preventing us from finding peace in our own lives. But one truth is that peace is not something we can find in external things like work or wealth. True peace comes from within, from how we face life and our own emotions. A story that helps us understand this is the story of Min, a successful man with a busy job and a life with no shortages. However, Min constantly felt stressed, tired, and could not feel joy in the achievements he had made. He often felt like he was racing against time, never having enough time for himself. Min went to a friend seeking advice. The friend asked him a simple question that made Min think for a long time. Have you ever taken time to just stop, breathe, and feel what is around you? That question startled Min. He realized that throughout the time, he had been living too hurriedly, always worrying about the future and what he hadn't done, forgetting the present moment, forgetting that peace could be found in simple moments. He began to try changing his habits. Every morning, Min spent a few minutes sitting still, breathing deeply, and feeling the peace in the space around him. He didn't rush into work right away, didn't think about the tasks waiting for him. He simply enjoyed each moment of life. Gradually, he realized that peace was not something to be sought far away, but a choice in each moment we live. Peace in a busy life is not about having enough time to rest, nor about having a life without problems. True peace lies in how we face life, the things we cannot control, and more importantly, how we perceive and manage our emotions. We may not be able to change everything, but we can definitely change how we react and view those things. Just like Min's story, many times we don't need to change everything around us to find peace. In reality, we only need to change our perspective and attitude toward life. A friend of mine, named Lynn, also went through a long period of feeling like her life had become burdensome, and everything was piling up on her shoulders. Lynn is a single mother, responsible for work and taking care of her children. She often felt like she was racing against time and constantly anxious. However, one day, Lynn decided to change her habits. Instead of letting her mind be swept away by worries, she spent 10 minutes each morning sitting still and reflecting on the good things in life. Those quiet minutes helped her realize that peace was not something distant, but something everyone could find within themselves. Lynn and Min's stories show that peace is not a destination, but a journey. It is the journey where we learn to accept everything as it is, learn to face difficulties without letting them control our souls. We cannot change everything in life, but we can definitely change how we face and perceive those things. When we learn not to be swept away by worries, when we know how to make time for ourselves, breathe, and enjoy life, we will realize that peace is not something we need to look for, but something available right within us. Like the waves on the shore, life can be calm at times and turbulent at others. But regardless of the circumstances, if we know how to stop and listen, we will realize that peace always exists right within us. Peace is not about having a life without worries, but about learning to live fully in the present, not letting our souls be disturbed by unnecessary things. When we know how to find peace in every moment, we will find that no challenge can make us afraid or exhausted anymore. Life is always changing and full of surprises, but only when we learn to face it with peace in our souls, we can truly live fully, happily, and freely. Let's start by stopping, breathing deeply, and feeling what's around us. Peace is always available, as long as we open our hearts to receive it. Life is filled with worries and busyness. Sometimes we forget that true peace is not in what we own or achieve, but in how we face ourselves and the life around us. This is a truth the Buddha has taught for a long time, that the mind is the source of all suffering and happiness in life. When we know how to take care of and nurture our soul, we will find peace even in simple moments, and that is the true healing everyone needs. Imagine one day, you wake up in a familiar room, but your heart feels heavy. Worries and frustrations from yesterday, from unfinished tasks or unsatisfactory relationships, make your mind feel exhausted. You begin to feel as if there is no end to the endless cycle of life. But in such moments, try to stop, take a deep breath, and follow the Buddha's teaching. The mind leads all things. All these feelings and thoughts do not come from the outside, but are created by your own mind. Your state of mind can turn everything into a challenge, or it can help you overcome difficulties with peace and composure. The story of a woman named Mai is a vivid example of this. Mai is a young woman who works hard to take care of her family. Her work is very busy, and she is always under pressure, feeling like she never has enough time for herself. One day, while sitting in her office full of papers, Mai felt her heart tighten, an inexplicable feeling of anxiety and frustration. She wondered, is life just all about this? At that moment, she happened to hear a lecture on Buddhist teachings and the stillness of the soul. The speaker said, "The mind not only leads all things, but it is also the master of your life. If your mind is not at peace, you will never feel at ease, even if you achieve everything you want." Mai realized that she had focused too much on external things and forgotten that only when the soul is at peace can life truly be complete. Then, Mai began to meditate every day, taking a few minutes to just sit still and breathe deeply. During those moments, she didn't think about work or difficulties, but focused only on her breath, on her presence in the moment. Gradually, Mai felt the anxiety in her soul decrease, and in its place, she felt a peace she had never experienced before. She understood that peace is not when everything goes as we want, but when we know how to accept, let go, and master our emotions. As a result, Mai no longer felt exhausted or worried about things beyond her control. She learned to find peace in the quiet moments. The peace and healing that the Buddha teaches are not about avoiding or ignoring the difficulties of life. On the contrary, it is a proactive approach that helps us face every challenge without being swept away by them. When we learn to breathe deeply, let go of negative thoughts, and live fully in the present moment, we will realize that life is beautiful despite all the challenges. This is mindfulness, the full awareness of each moment in life. We cannot change the past, nor can we predict the future, but we can choose how to face the present. What we think, feel, and how we react to life determines our happiness. If we are always afraid, judging, or tormenting ourselves about what is past, we will never find peace. But if we learn to accept, forgive, and live in the present, we will realize that everything that happens in life has a reason and can bring us valuable lessons. Peace is not something easily attained in this world full of worries. But if we take time to reflect on ourselves, spend a little time each day to breathe, to listen to ourselves, we will begin to feel the difference. As Mai found, peace is not the absence of difficulties, but the ability to face them without letting them overwhelm us. It is a journey, a process of learning and healing, and it begins with breathing, letting go, and living fully in the present. So, take some quiet moments in this busy life. Let your soul relax and allow yourself to heal. Remember, peace is not a goal to be achieved, but a state in which we can live each day. This life is always full of challenges and difficulties, sometimes making us feel like everything is too heavy. The burdens of work, relationships, or life's worries make our souls never feel at ease. And in such moments, Buddhist teachings say that letting go is not weakness, but a courageous act, a way for us to face the reality of life and free our souls from attachments, to become freer and lighter. Many people think that letting go is something for the weak, a time when we no longer have the strength to hold on to what we cherish. But in reality, letting go is a powerful act. It requires us to face reality without avoidance, to accept things that cannot be changed, and to dare to release our souls to move forward. Letting go is courage because it requires us to overcome fear, uncertainty, and negative emotions to make our soul light and peaceful. The Buddha teaches that everything in life is impermanent. Everything changes and cannot be held forever. We may not be able to change circumstances, but we can change how we perceive and face events in life. The courage to let go is not about giving up or running away, but about learning to accept and live with things that cannot be changed. When we understand that everything is impermanent, we will no longer cling to what has passed, and we will know how to let it fall away, like a leaf dropping from a branch, leaving nothing to weigh down our soul. Letting go is also a way to free ourselves from the burden of worry. We sometimes carry worries about the past, about past mistakes, or concerns about the future that we cannot control. These anxieties prevent us from fully living in the present. The Buddha teaches that when we let go of worry, we will feel peace in our souls. Letting go does not mean giving up, but it is a way to free ourselves from the bondage of negative thoughts. When we no longer cling to the past or worry about the future, we will see each moment in the present become precious and worth cherishing. One of the reasons we hesitate to let go is the fear of loss. We are afraid that when we let go of something, we will have nothing left to hold on to. But the truth is, when we dare to let go, we create space for new, better things. When we let go of unhealthy relationships, jobs we are no longer passionate about, or negative thoughts, we open our hearts to receive new opportunities, new affections, and new experiences. Letting go is not loss, but an opening of new opportunities for us to grow and develop. We often carry psychological burdens, false beliefs about ourselves and life. It could be a sense of inferiority, fear of inadequacy, or unhealed emotional wounds. To live peacefully and freely, we must courageously face these wounds and let them go. The Buddha teaches that if we do not dare to face the truth about ourselves, do not dare to confront the wounds in our hearts, we will never be able to find true peace. Only when we dare to let go of our fears, our feelings of inadequacy, can we feel freedom in our souls. The courage to let go also involves learning to forgive, not only others, but also ourselves. In life, we are often hurt by the actions of others or by our own wrong decisions. But the Buddha teaches that forgiveness is the way for us to free ourselves from resentment, from the pains of the past. Forgiveness does not mean we forget what has happened, but it means we do not let those memories control our present life. Forgiveness is an act of liberation, helping the soul become lighter and peaceful. Freedom in letting go comes not only from acceptance, but also from learning to love and appreciate ourselves. When we know that we do not need to force ourselves to hold on to everything around us, when we understand that we do not need to prove our worth through external things, we will feel free and at peace. The Buddha teaches that when we live truthfully with ourselves, when we are no longer afraid, no longer compare ourselves, and no longer cling to things we cannot keep, we will feel light and free with every step we take. We may not be able to control everything in life, but we can control how we face them. Letting go is the courage to live in the truth of ourselves, to no longer be swept away by unnecessary worries. When we dare to let go of things that do not bring happiness, we will find freedom and peace in our souls. That is when we truly live fully, love ourselves, and find peace in the simple things in life. In the face of continuous challenges, sometimes we feel like we are living a rushed life with endless worries and exhaustion. We rush for work, relationships, and distant goals, sometimes forgetting that the most important thing is to return to ourselves, listen to our inner selves, and live fully in the present moment. And this is the meaning of mindfulness, a method that helps us face and master our emotions, so the soul can find peace amidst the ups and downs of life. Imagine one day, you wake up in a day full of plans and tasks awaiting you. You open your eyes and find yourself rushing, thoughts about work, responsibilities surrounding you like a large wave. Meanwhile, your mind cannot stop, constantly revolving around worries about the future, about things you haven't done. You feel exhausted right from the moment you wake up and cannot feel the joy in each moment of life. Lynn's story, a young woman living in a big city, is a testament to what we often encounter. Lynn is an energetic person, always working hard, but gradually she felt disconnected from herself. Every day, she rushed after the hustle of life, forgetting to spend time for herself. One day, Lynn realized that she no longer felt joy in work or in conversations with friends. Her soul felt empty and tired, even though she had everything she wanted. She realized that she had been too busy with the outside world and forgotten the inner world. A friend of Lynn suggested she try practicing mindfulness, full awareness in every moment of life. Mindfulness helps you live fully with yourself, face emotions without being swept away by them, her friend said. Lynn began to learn about mindfulness and tried applying it to her daily life. At first, she started with small exercises, such as spending a few minutes every morning to breathe deeply and feel each breath, or focusing on simple actions like eating, walking, or working. She learned not to let thoughts about work or worries take control, but to focus on what was happening in the present moment. Gradually, Lynn realized a miracle. When she focused entirely on each moment, she no longer felt caught in the whirlpool of anxiety and exhaustion. A sense of peace began to return, and she felt a connection with herself, with the true emotions in her heart. Mindfulness is not just about focusing on the breath, but also about identifying and facing our emotions and thoughts without judgment or avoidance. This helped her live fully in the present, rediscover joy in the simplest things. Mindfulness is not a complicated technique, but a way of life, a way of seeing the world and our emotions. The Buddha teaches that mindfulness is returning to oneself, being awake to every feeling, thought, and action. When we live mindfully, we do not let ourselves be swept away by thoughts of the past or worries about the future. We simply live in the present moment, accepting and feeling everything as it is, without judgment, without expectation. And in that moment, our soul is free, light, and at peace. Mindfulness is a powerful tool to help us master our emotions. In difficult times, when we feel tired or anxious, we can stop, breathe deeply, and recognize those emotions. We do not need to avoid or run from them, but simply face them and understand that emotions are part of the experience. They come and go like waves. When we do not let emotions control us, we will no longer be stuck in negative thoughts, and the soul will be free, returning to a state of peace. This life has countless challenges, but when we can return to ourselves, live mindfully, we will find peace in every situation. Imagine in difficult moments, instead of letting emotions overwhelm us, we just stop for a moment, breathe deeply, and observe our emotions. Truly feeling them without judging or resisting, we will realize that all difficulties are just a small part of the overall picture of life. When we face everything with a peaceful soul, we will feel lighter and more at ease. Mindfulness helps us find peace right in the present, helping us not be swept away by worries or negative emotions. And that is the way we return to ourselves, living fully, peacefully, and freely, no matter the circumstances. Peace is not something far away, but something each of us can feel right in the simple moments of life. Remember, mindfulness is the key to finding peace in this busy life. In today's modern life, there are many things that make us feel we have to be perfect. From work, studies, to social relationships, we are often pressured by unrealistic standards set by society, family, or ourselves. We create great expectations for ourselves, and when we cannot achieve them, we feel like failures, blame ourselves, and sometimes faith in ourselves. But in Buddhist teachings, one of the profound lessons the Buddha teaches is, we do not need to live perfectly, just live truthfully with ourselves, and let go of unrealistic expectations from the outside. The perfection we pursue is sometimes just an illusion, a model drawn by society, which is not something that can be naturally achieved. We, each with our own circumstances, personalities, and paths, how can we impose a common standard for all? The Buddha teaches that life is not a competition for us to strive for perfection, but a journey to explore and understand ourselves. Perfection is peace in accepting our flaws, our mistakes, and the challenges we face in life. When we stop and view life with the eyes of mindfulness, we will realize that perfection is not the goal of life, but the ability to accept and live truthfully with ourselves. We do not need to hide our weaknesses or try to become a perfect version according to the standards of others. Perfection does not come from becoming someone else, but from loving and appreciating what we have, including our flaws. When we live truthfully with ourselves, we no longer have to force ourselves to please others, and we no longer have to live under the pressure of unrealistic expectations. Letting go is also a way to free ourselves from the burden of worry. Sometimes we carry worries about the past, about past mistakes, or concerns about the future that we cannot control. These anxieties prevent us from fully living in the present. The Buddha teaches that when we let go of worry, we will feel peace in our souls. Letting go does not mean giving up, but it is a way to free ourselves from the bondage of negative thoughts. When we no longer cling to the past or worry about the future, we will find each moment in the present precious and worth cherishing. One of the reasons we hesitate to let go is the fear of loss. We are afraid that when we let go of something, we will have nothing left to hold on to. But the truth is, when we dare to let go, we create space for new, better things. When we let go of unhealthy relationships, jobs we are no longer passionate about, or negative thoughts, we open our hearts to receive new opportunities, new affections, and new experiences. Letting go is not loss, but an opening of new opportunities for us to grow and develop. We often carry psychological burdens, false beliefs about ourselves and life. It could be a sense of inferiority, fear of inadequacy, or unhealed emotional wounds. To live peacefully and freely, we must courageously face these wounds and let them go. The Buddha teaches that if we do not dare to face the truth about ourselves, do not dare to confront the wounds in our hearts, we will never be able to find true peace. Only when we dare to let go of our fears, our feelings of inadequacy, can we feel freedom in our souls. The courage to let go also involves learning to forgive, not only others, but also ourselves. In life, we are often hurt by the actions of others or by our own wrong decisions. But the Buddha teaches that forgiveness is the way for us to free ourselves from resentment, from the pains of the past. Forgiveness does not mean we forget what has happened, but it means we do not let those memories control our present life. Forgiveness is an act of liberation, helping the soul become lighter and peaceful. Freedom in letting go comes not only from acceptance, but also from learning to love and appreciate ourselves. When we know that we do not need to force ourselves to hold on to everything around us, when we understand that we do not need to prove our worth through external things, we will feel free and at peace. The Buddha teaches that when we live truthfully with ourselves, when we are no longer afraid, no longer compare ourselves, and no longer cling to things we cannot keep, we will feel light and free with every step we take. We may not be able to control everything in life, but we can control how we face them. Letting go is the courage to live in the truth of ourselves, to no longer be swept away by unnecessary worries. When we dare to let go of things that do not bring happiness, we will find freedom and peace in our souls. That is when we truly live fully, love ourselves, and find peace in the simple things in life. In the face of continuous challenges, sometimes we feel like we are living a rushed life, with endless worries and exhaustion. We rush for work, relationships, and distant goals, sometimes forgetting that the most important thing is to return to ourselves, listen to our inner selves, and live fully in the present moment. And this is the meaning of mindfulness, a method that helps us face and master our emotions, so the soul can find peace amidst the ups and downs of life. Imagine one day, you wake up in a day full of plans and tasks awaiting you. You open your eyes and find yourself rushing. Thoughts about work, responsibilities surrounding you like a large wave. Meanwhile, your mind cannot stop, constantly revolving around worries about the future, about things you haven't done. You feel exhausted right from the moment you wake up and cannot feel the joy in each moment of life. Lynn's story, a young woman living in a big city, is a testament to what we often encounter. Lynn is an energetic person, always working hard, but gradually she felt disconnected from herself. Every day she rushed after the hustle of life, forgetting to spend time for herself. One day, Lynn realized that she no longer felt joy in work or in conversations with friends. Her soul felt empty and tired, even though she had everything she wanted. She realized that she had been too busy with the outside world and forgotten the inner world. Lynn began learning how to return to herself through simple yet meaningful actions. Every morning, instead of waking up hastily and diving straight into work, she spent a few minutes sitting still, breathing deeply and feeling her breath. She listened to each breath, feeling her body here in the present moment. Lynn also began to change how she faced her emotions. Instead of running away from fatigue or anxiety, she learned to identify and confront those emotions without judgment or avoidance. She allowed herself to feel what she was going through, not forcing herself to pretend to be okay when she wasn't truly okay. Because of this, she found peace in her soul, not because of what she had, but because she had found a way to live fully within herself. Returning to oneself is a long and challenging journey, but it is the only way to find peace. Sometimes, we are swept along by the pressures of life, society, and others' expectations. We forget that life is not a race, and we do not always have to struggle to achieve everything. Only when we know how to return, to reflect on ourselves, can we find true peace. Just like Lynn, when she stopped and returned to herself, she realized that peace is not something distant, but something already within each of us, as long as we are willing to stop and listen. When we return to ourselves, we not only learn how to experience life in a different way, but we also learn to forgive ourselves. Sometimes we are too harsh on ourselves, demanding perfection and the achievement of everything. But the truth is, we do not have to become perfect to live a peaceful life. Only when we accept our flaws, our mistakes, can we truly live authentically and find freedom in our souls. This is what the Buddha taught about mindfulness and letting go. Mindfulness not only helps us live fully in the present moment, but also helps us identify and master our emotions and thoughts. When we return to ourselves, we are no longer swept away by worries or negative emotions, but instead, we experience peace and composure. The Buddha also emphasized that the mind leads all things, meaning that our mind decides everything that happens in our life. When our soul is at peace, we will not be influenced by external circumstances and will have enough strength to face any challenge calmly. Returning to oneself also means living a true life, not living for others or external goals, but living for oneself. We do not need to please everyone or achieve what society expects. This life is short, and the truth is, happiness truly comes when we learn to return, live authentically with ourselves, and find peace within. Therefore, take some quiet moments every day, stop, and listen to what your heart is saying. Remember, peace is not a distant goal, but a state in which we can live fully in the present moment, returning to our true self. Return, breathe, and live truly. In today's fast-paced life where everything happens at a breakneck speed, we sometimes forget that peace is not something far away or hard to achieve. True peace really comes from the gentleness in the soul, from the ability to stop, listen to ourselves, and allow ourselves to rest without feeling the need to prove anything to anyone. It is a relaxation, not only of the body, but also a serenity in the soul, a moment of living fully in the present without worrying about what's next. The story of Mai, a friend of mine, may be a testament to this. Mai is a very dynamic person, always diligent in her work and relationships. She constantly strives to achieve everything in life: a good job, a loving family, and recognition from those around her. However, gradually, Mai began to feel tired. Her work kept piling up, responsibilities were accumulating, and she no longer had time for herself. Mai felt like she was racing in a life with no stop, always trying to prove that she was good enough, perfect enough. The stress and lack of time made her feel increasingly disconnected from herself. One day, after a tense meeting at work, Mai walked home in the quiet of the afternoon. She stopped for a moment on the side of the road, feeling the cool evening air. And in that moment, she suddenly realized that she had never really stopped to breathe. She had always chased after the expectations of society, family, and herself, forgetting that peace is not something to be found in achievements or recognition from others. True peace comes from within, from the gentleness of living and allowing oneself to rest without having to prove anything. Mai began to practice gentleness in her life. She started finding small moments during the day to stop, just breathe, and listen to her body, feeling what was going on inside. She no longer set huge goals each day, but instead, she took time to do things that made her feel relaxed. Whether it was taking a walk in the park, sitting quietly with a book, or simply sitting alone and appreciating the small things in life. She also learned to say no when she felt she didn't have the strength to do more, and she learned to refuse requests that were not in alignment with her mental well-being. Gradually, Mai realized that when she allowed herself to be gentler, she found peace in the simplest moments. She no longer had to prove anything to anyone, and that gave her a sense of freedom, as if she were truly living as herself. Peace from gentleness is not about avoiding difficulties or ignoring responsibilities. It does not mean living lazily or irresponsibly. On the contrary, peace comes from learning how to face everything in life with a gentle mindset, without forcing ourselves to make everything perfect. We do not need to prove that we are brilliant or excellent in front of anyone to feel worthy of love and respect. Peace is when you stop, listen to yourself, and allow yourself to rest, not because you're tired, but because you understand that you also need time to recover and find balance. As the Buddha taught, peace is not the absence of waves, but how you face them. When we live gently, we do not avoid challenges or worry about the future, but instead, we know how to face everything gently, without forcing ourselves to follow any perfect mold. Peace comes from accepting imperfection, from understanding that things do not always go according to plan, and sometimes the most beautiful things come from simple things, from moments truly lived in the present. Peace from gentleness is when we do not let worries about the future or regrets about the past control our lives. It is when we learn to breathe in difficult moments, when we accept that everything has its ups and downs, and what matters is how we can find peace even in those challenges. A friend of mine, Hung, shared a simple yet meaningful story with me. Hung works in finance, and his job is very stressful, always under pressure. One day, when he felt exhausted and could not continue, he decided to spend a weekend morning walking alone in the park. He didn't bring his phone, didn't think about work, just simply walked and felt each step, each cool breeze. After that morning, Hung felt reset. His soul became lighter and full of life. He realized that sometimes peace only comes when we allow ourselves to stop and feel each moment. Peace comes from the gentleness in the soul, when we know how to stop and relax, when we don't force ourselves to do too many things, but instead learn to love and take care of ourselves. Gentleness is not weakness or giving up, but the strength of acceptance, of understanding that we don't always need to push ourselves to succeed. Only when we live gently can we truly feel peace within ourselves. So, allow yourself to be gentler. Stop for a moment in this life, breathe deeply, and feel the good things life has to offer. Peace will come when you know how to live fully in the present, not needing to prove anything to anyone. When we live gently, we will find the freedom and peace we've always been seeking. In the modern world, even though we can connect with thousands of people through media, the feeling of loneliness has become increasingly common. Many people, despite living in a crowded community, still feel isolated, unable to find deep connections. Sometimes, the feeling of loneliness is not because of the absence of loved ones, but because of a lack of emotional connection, understanding, and sharing. The Buddha teaches that the feeling of loneliness is not something we need to escape from, but an opportunity to face ourselves, to find peace within ourselves. The feeling of loneliness is sometimes a signal from the soul, indicating that we are disconnected from ourselves. In the fast-paced and chaotic life, we easily get swept into superficial social relationships, forgetting to take care of our souls. We may have friends, colleagues, and family, but if we don't know how to face ourselves, we can still feel empty, as if lost in our own lives. The Buddha teaches that loneliness is part of life, and what matters is how we face it, instead of trying to escape or deny it. One way to face loneliness is to learn to listen to ourselves. When we feel lonely, instead of seeking comfort from the outside, we can take time to settle down and connect with ourselves. This is not about searching for why we feel lonely, but accepting that sometimes we need to be alone, to face our own emotions without needing the presence of others. The feeling of loneliness can be a time for us to calm our minds, reflect on what we truly need, on the values of life, and the goals we have in life. Finding peace from within is an important method for dealing with loneliness. The Buddha teaches that when we learn to live mindfully, each moment of life becomes valuable and meaningful. When we do not cling to relationships or external conditions to find happiness, we will realize that happiness and peace do not come from having someone beside us, but from living fully in each present moment. Mindfulness helps us realize that whether we are alone or with others, we can still experience peace in our souls. One way to face loneliness is to learn to care for ourselves. Sometimes we feel lonely because we don't feel loved or aren't receiving the care we desire. However, the Buddha teaches that self-love is the first step in feeling love and connection. When we know how to care for and love ourselves, we will no longer feel empty or lacking in affection. Loving oneself is not selfish. It is an act of self-care for the soul and body, a way for us to experience peace from within, rather than seeking it from the outside. The feeling of loneliness can also be an opportunity to return to stillness, to practice mindfulness. When living mindfully, we learn not to be swept up in thoughts of the past or worries about the future, but to live fully in what is happening right now. Mindfulness helps us observe the feeling of loneliness without reacting to it, simply observing and feeling it. When we don't fight against the feeling of loneliness, when we don't see it as a problem to solve, we will realize that loneliness is just a temporary psychological state. It will come and go, like all other emotions in life. In moments of loneliness, we can practice compassion. Do not fall into self-blame or feeling abandoned. Instead, offer yourself compassion, acceptance, and forgiveness. The feeling of loneliness sometimes comes from not fully accepting ourselves or feeling deprived of affection. The Buddha teaches that compassion is not only for others, but also for ourselves. When we face loneliness with compassion, we will feel lighter, no longer haunted by the absence of others, but instead, we will open our hearts to embrace what life brings. Loneliness can also be an opportunity to rediscover ourselves. In moments of loneliness, when there is no one beside us to share with, we can find connection with ourselves. This is the time we can practice self-reflection, to look at our life, to ask ourselves profound questions. What am I seeking in this life? Am I living in line with my values? Do I love and care for myself enough? When we find the answers to these questions, we will feel peace from within, and the feeling of loneliness will no longer make us feel empty. We don't need to seek happiness from the outside to overcome loneliness. The Buddha teaches that happiness comes from living true to our nature, living in mindfulness, and loving ourselves. When we live with compassion, When we take care of our soul and body, when we learn to love ourselves, we will find a deep connection with the world around us, and the feeling of loneliness will no longer cause us pain. Instead, we will feel complete and peaceful right within ourselves. Therefore, when feeling lonely, don't rush to escape or chase external connections. Return to yourself, practice mindfulness and compassion to find peace from within. The feeling of loneliness, instead of being something bad, can be an opportunity for us to grow, to understand ourselves and life better, and to feel peace within ourselves. Sometimes we feel tired, confused, and lacking, as if there is an emptiness in our soul that we cannot fill. We try to find completeness through work, relationships, or material things, but sometimes the more we search, the more we feel lacking. This is when the Buddha teaches us about the concept of emptiness and completeness. Letting go, according to the Buddha's view, is not about loss, but about creating space in our souls from which we can receive better things, deeper values, and new peace and prosperity in life. The emptiness that the Buddha teaches is not about deprivation or being empty, but a space for us to open our hearts and embrace new things. Inside each of us, there are parts of our soul still burdened, anxieties and wounds that haven't been healed. We often try to fill this emptiness with external things, work, material possessions, relationships. However, when we only focus on chasing these things, we easily forget the importance of nourishing our soul and living fully with what exists within us. Emptiness is an opportunity for us to learn to let go, to release old wounds and negative emotions that no longer occupy our minds, and to expand the space in our souls, making it lighter and more open. The Buddha teaches that when we let go, we do not lose anything precious, but in fact, we create space for better things to come into our lives. Letting go of negative thoughts, emotions, and unrealistic expectations helps us feel peaceful, light, and ready to receive new things, new opportunities, and love. When the soul is purified and no longer burdened, we will feel completeness from within, not from material things or the outside world. Perfection is not a goal to be achieved, but a natural process within each person when we learn to live authentically, love, and care for ourselves. Sometimes we think that perfection is when everything in life must be perfect. Work, family, love, everything must be complete. But the Buddha teaches that perfection does not come from completing everything in life perfectly, but from living in acceptance and appreciating what we have, even when we have not achieved what we want. When we let go of unnecessary things, the space in our soul will be where true values like love, compassion, peace, and prosperity naturally enter our lives. This is the healing process the Buddha teaches. When we no longer cling to wounds, suffering, or unrealistic expectations, we open our hearts to receive peace. The space is not emptiness, but a space where we can live freely, unburdened by the past, and ready to welcome new opportunities in life. This space is the liberation the Buddha teaches. It is not a space of deprivation, but a space of freedom in the soul, where there is no imposition, no attachment to things that cannot be changed. True perfection comes from within, when we know how to love ourselves, when we accept ourselves with all our shortcomings, and when we live in mindfulness and compassion. When we let go, we will realize that perfection is not a destination, but a state of the soul where we feel peace and freedom. This perfection comes from living fully in each moment, not letting the past or our wounds control us, and not being bound by unrealistically high expectations about ourselves or life. The Buddha teaches that only when we accept and live truthfully with ourselves, without needing to be anyone else, will perfection naturally come. A simple example that illustrates this is the story of a mother named Lan. Lan always felt she wasn't good enough when she couldn't be perfect in the eyes of her children and those around her. She always set high standards for herself, always trying to do everything perfectly. But each time she didn't achieve it, she felt like a failure. One day, she went to see a teacher, and the teacher told her, "You don't need to be perfect to love and care for your children. You just need to be yourself, with all your weaknesses and shortcomings. And that is exactly what your children need from you." This statement was like a light shining into her soul, helping her realize that perfection is living truthfully, loving and caring for herself and others, not about achieving things that are impossible. When we understand that letting go creates space for perfection to come, we no longer feel deprived. We no longer feel that life is lacking something. In fact, when we live in acceptance and love for ourselves, when we no longer cling to expectations or pressures from outside, we will feel complete and perfect in each moment. True peace, prosperity, and happiness come only when we know how to let go of what's unnecessary and create space to receive better things. The space and perfection are a wonderful blend in life. When we let go, we lose nothing, but in fact, we open our hearts to welcome good things, true values from life, and in that, we find peace and lasting prosperity. In modern life, stress is an inevitable part. We face so many pressures, from work, family, to our own expectations. In such times, feelings of fatigue and worry can overwhelm our souls, making it difficult for us to find peace. But there is a very simple, easy to practice method that works immediately, and that is breathing techniques. Deep breathing, slow breathing, and focusing on the breath can help us calm our minds, reduce stress, and reconnect with ourselves, with the present, where we can find peace. The story of Than, a close friend of mine, is a clear example of the miraculous power of breathing techniques. Than is an enthusiastic person, always working hard and responsible in everything she does. However, her job is always stressful and requires her to make many important decisions every day. Sometimes, the pressure from work made Than feel like she couldn't breathe. Her mood was always heavy, tense, and she couldn't focus. She felt trapped in a whirlwind of worry and exhaustion. One morning, as Than was preparing for an important meeting, she felt her body tired and her mind foggy. At that moment, she remembered once hearing about the abdominal breathing technique, a deep breathing method she had read about in books. She decided to try it right away. Than sat down, closed her eyes, and began to breathe deeply through her nose, letting her belly expand, holding the breath for a few seconds, then slowly exhaling through her mouth. She repeated this a few times, breathing in and out slowly and consciously. After a few minutes, Than felt a change in her body. The tension had eased, her mind became clearer, and the anxiety started to fade. She felt calmer and was able to enter the meeting with a clear and confident mindset. The abdominal breathing technique, also known as diaphragmatic breathing, is a simple yet very effective method for reducing stress. When we breathe through our belly, instead of just breathing with our chest, we let the air go deep into the diaphragm, causing the belly to expand when inhaling and contract when exhaling. This not only helps our body relax, but also helps our mind become calmer. Because when we breathe properly, the body automatically sends signals to the nervous system, helping reduce the levels of stress and anxiety. In fact, deep breathing not only helps reduce stress in emergency situations, but also serves as a useful tool to maintain peace throughout the day. When we feel pressure, anxiety, or face stressful situations, just a few minutes of deep breathing can help us regain balance. It is through breathing that we can return to the present moment, no longer allowing negative thoughts or worries to dominate our minds. The story of Hai, a colleague of mine, is also a prime example. Hai works in a competitive and high-pressure environment. There are days when he feels he can no longer bear it. His mind is overwhelmed by work and mounting tasks. One day, while handling a very stressful situation, Hai remembered a friend's advice about deep breathing. He decided to try it immediately. Hai closed his eyes, took a deep breath, held it for a few seconds, then slowly exhaled. After a few breaths, he felt his body release the tension. At that moment, his mind became lighter, and the chaotic thoughts gradually settled. Hai continued to apply this breathing technique whenever he felt stressed and realized that it was a great tool to help him maintain peace in both work and life. Breathing techniques are a simple method, yet they have great power in regulating emotions and calming the mind. When we learn to breathe deeply, we not only improve our physical health, but also help our souls relax and become comfortable. That is why deep breathing becomes an essential part of Buddhist teachings and mindfulness. Breathing is a natural action of the body, but when we master our breath, we find freedom in our soul and peace in life. When we face difficult situations, don't forget that one thing we can control is our breath. Take a few quiet moments, breathe deeply, and feel the peace spreading throughout your body. Sometimes, simply breathing consciously and focusing on the body, we will find release from the stresses that overwhelm our minds. Peace is not something far away, but it is the ability to return to ourselves, listen to our breath, and live fully in every moment. So whenever you feel stressed or tired, take a moment, breathe deeply, and experience life through each breath. Peace will come when we allow ourselves to live more gently, letting our soul rest and relax. In the journey of personal development, mental peace plays an incredibly important role. It is the starting point for growth, the foundation that helps us overcome challenges, discover creativity, and harmonize with life. The Buddha teaches that to achieve peace of mind, we need to learn to let go of burdens in our hearts, worries about the past, the future, or unrealistic expectations. Letting go is not only the first step in the journey to find peace, but it is also the foundation that helps us develop ourselves, open up hidden potential, and feel harmony in life. Mental peace is not the absence of difficulties, but the ability to face those difficulties without being controlled by them. When we have peace of mind, we are no longer swept away by negative emotions, worries, or anger. We don't let the challenges in life dominate our souls. The Buddha teaches that mental peace is freedom from within, the ability to perceive life with calmness and mindfulness. When we let go of unnecessary things, we feel lighter, more relaxed, and more easily find peace in every moment. When we have peace of mind, we no longer feel stressed or pressured. Mental peace is the resource that helps us face life firmly, not letting difficulties or challenges make us lose our direction. This does not mean that we will not face challenges, but we will know how to face and handle them with calmness, without disturbing our minds or emotions. Mental peace helps us understand that every difficulty, every challenge is an opportunity to grow, to discover hidden abilities within ourselves. Letting go is the first step in building mental peace, but it is also the solid foundation for personal growth. When we learn to let go, we not only free ourselves from worries, wounds, or negative emotions, but also open up space for better things. Letting go is not about giving up. It's about creating space in our soul to receive new ideas, creativity, and opportunities in life. When we are no longer controlled by negative thoughts or unnecessary worries, we feel free and can easily unlock our creative potential. Mental peace is the foundation for fostering creativity in all areas of life. Creativity does not come just from having knowledge or skills, but from having the ability to view life expansively, not being limited by narrow thoughts, worries, or pressure. When our soul is purified, we can see everything around us with a fresh perspective, finding opportunities and creative solutions in situations that seem hopeless. The Buddha teaches that only when we have peace of mind can we truly live with creativity, unbound by prejudices or fixed thoughts. In fact, deep breathing not only helps reduce stress in emergency situations, but also serves as a useful tool to maintain peace throughout the day. When we feel pressure, anxiety, or face stressful situations, just a few minutes of deep breathing can help us regain balance. It is through breathing that we can return to the present moment, no longer allowing negative thoughts or worries to dominate our minds. The story of Hai, a colleague of mine, is also a prime example. Hai works in a competitive and high-pressure environment. There are days when he feels he can no longer bear it. His mind is overwhelmed by work and mounting tasks. One day, while handling a very stressful situation, Hai remembered a friend's advice about deep breathing. He decided to try it immediately. Hai closed his eyes, took a deep breath, held it for a few seconds, then slowly exhaled. After a few breaths, he felt his body release the tension. At that moment, his mind became lighter, and the chaotic thoughts gradually settled. Hai continued to apply this breathing technique whenever he felt stressed and realized that it was a great tool to help him maintain peace in both work and life. Breathing techniques are a simple method, yet they have great power in regulating emotions and calming the mind. When we learn to breathe deeply, we not only improve our physical health, but also help our souls relax and become comfortable. That is why deep breathing becomes an essential part of Buddhist teachings and mindfulness. Breathing is a natural action of the body, but when we master our breath, we find freedom in our soul and peace in life. When we face difficult situations, don't forget that one thing we can control is our breath. Take a few quiet moments, breathe deeply, and feel the peace spreading throughout your body. Sometimes, simply breathing consciously and focusing on the body, we will find release from the stresses that overwhelm our minds. Peace is not something far away, but it is the ability to return to ourselves, listen to our breath, and live fully in every moment. So, whenever you feel stressed or tired, take a moment, breathe deeply, and experience life through each breath. Peace will come when we allow ourselves to live more gently, letting our soul rest and relax. In the journey of personal development, mental peace plays an incredibly important role. It is the starting point for growth, the foundation that helps us overcome challenges, discover creativity, and harmonize with life. The Buddha teaches that to achieve peace of mind, we need to learn to let go of burdens in our hearts, worries about the past, the future, or unrealistic expectations. Letting go is not only the first step in the journey to find peace, but it is also the foundation that helps us develop ourselves, open up hidden potential, and feel harmony in life. Mental peace is not the absence of difficulties, but the ability to face those difficulties without being controlled by them. When we have peace of mind, we are no longer swept away by negative emotions, worries, or anger. We don't let the challenges in life dominate our souls. The Buddha teaches that mental peace is freedom from within, the ability to perceive life with calmness and mindfulness. When we let go of unnecessary things, we feel lighter, more relaxed, and more easily find peace in every moment. When we have peace of mind, we no longer feel stressed or pressured. Mental peace is the resource that helps us face life firmly, not letting difficulties or challenges make us lose our direction. This does not mean that we will not face challenges, but we will know how to face and handle them with calmness without disturbing our minds or emotions. Mental peace helps us understand that every difficulty, every challenge is an opportunity to grow, to discover hidden abilities within ourselves. Letting go is the first step in building mental peace, but it is also the solid foundation for personal growth. When we learn to let go, we not only free ourselves from worries, wounds, or negative emotions, but also open up space for better things. Letting go is not about giving up. It's about creating space in our soul to receive new ideas, creativity, and opportunities in life. When we are no longer controlled by negative thoughts or unnecessary worries, we feel free and can easily unlock our creative potential. Mental peace is the foundation for fostering creativity in all areas of life. Creativity does not come just from having knowledge or skills, but from having the ability to view life expansively, not being limited by narrow thoughts, worries, or pressure. When our soul is purified, we can see everything around us with a fresh perspective, finding opportunities and creative solutions in situations that seem hopeless. The Buddha teaches that only when we have peace of mind can we truly live with creativity, unbound by prejudices or fixed thoughts. Patience is also empathy for oneself. When we can face life's difficulties and challenges without judging or criticizing ourselves, we will see that everything happens for a reason and is part of the development process. Letting go is not giving up. It is the choice to lighten the soul in order to embrace new things. Only when we are patient with ourselves can we see the value in the process of letting go and recognize positive changes within ourselves. A simple example of patience is the story of a person learning meditation. At first, he always felt he couldn't calm his mind. His thoughts were always chaotic, and he often felt disappointed for not achieving peace immediately. But instead of giving up, he continued practicing every day, patiently, with each small step in the meditation journey. Gradually, he realized that peace is not a destination, but a state that he could achieve through patience by accompanying himself and learning to let go of all expectations. Patience is the key to maintaining peace in life. When we are patient, we learn to accept that each step, no matter how small, is an important part of the long journey. There is no great change that doesn't start from small changes. It is in those moments that we find peace in our hearts, and with each patient step, we move closer to the completeness and peace we seek. Therefore, be patient with yourself in the journey of letting go. Remember that every small step has value, and every time we are patient with ourselves, we build solid peace in our lives. This journey is not an instant change, but patience is the deciding factor that allows us to find freedom, happiness, and true peace. We cannot avoid relationships with others, from family, friends, to colleagues and relatives. However, not all relationships bring joy, peace, or growth to us. Sometimes we have to face negative relationships, people who not only fail to provide support, but may also cause harm, making us tired and feeling lost. And one of the most important things in the journey of growth is learning how to identify and let go of unhealthy relationships in order to live a peaceful, free, and properly developing life. The story of Lan, a close friend of mine, is a clear example of this. Lan is a kind-hearted woman, always ready to help others. However, she had a close friend named Mai, who was always unpleasant and demanded too much from Lan without ever reciprocating. Mai often made Lan feel inadequate, unable to meet every demand, and always criticized her even when Lan did nothing wrong. Lan felt like a vessel that was never filled, never receiving love, respect, or gratitude. Although she felt very uncomfortable in her heart, Lan continued to maintain this relationship because she was afraid of losing a friend and felt responsible to help. One day, after a tiring conversation with Mai, Lan felt her soul carrying a heavy burden. She could no longer continue living like this, always holding on to a relationship that no longer helped her grow. She decided to find a solution to this problem. Lan didn't want to sever all contact with Mai because she understood that everyone has their own reasons and circumstances. However, Lan realized that she needed to let go of things that no longer contributed to her personal growth. She began setting clearer boundaries in this relationship. Instead of meeting every demand of Mai, Lan learned to say no when she felt she couldn't do more. She also started sharing her feelings gently and honestly, explaining that she needed space and time for herself. Letting go of a negative relationship does not mean we must completely sever all ties abruptly or hurt the other person. Sometimes, letting go gently, stepping out of the relationship without causing harm to both parties is important. Letting go is not giving up. It is the choice to protect oneself and not let these relationships hinder our growth. In fact, when we identify a relationship that is no longer healthy, we don't need to create conflict or pain, but can do it gently, respecting both ourselves and the other person. We can let go of negative relationships without anger or blame. The most important thing is understanding that every relationship teaches us something. Perhaps that relationship helped us grow, but if it no longer aids our development, it's time to let it go. Letting go is not an end, but a new beginning, an opportunity to find healthier relationships, people who can support us and bring peace to our hearts. The story of Mai, another friend of mine, also exemplifies this positive change. Mai had a very controlling cousin who always criticized and controlled everything in the family. Mai felt she had to please her cousin and couldn't express herself. However, after a long time under pressure, Mai realized that this relationship made her feel deprived of freedom and unable to live as herself. One day, Mai decided to have a gentle conversation with her cousin, sharing her feelings and needs. She said that she needed respect and didn't want to continue living under that control. Although it was very difficult, Mai felt relieved and free after expressing her thoughts. She learned that letting go of an unhealthy relationship is sometimes just about protecting her mental health, so she could continue growing and living happily. Letting go does not mean abandoning others, but letting go of the negative emotions and attachments that harm ourselves. We can love and appreciate the people around us, but we don't always have to let them control our lives. Identifying and letting go of negative relationships is an act of self-love, a way to protect our soul from negativity, and allows us to live a freer and more developed life. Remember, peace starts from within our hearts. If a relationship makes us feel tired, anxious, or constrained, it is time for us to be brave and let go. This not only helps us feel lighter, but also gives us the opportunity to embrace better relationships, people who can walk with us on the path of growth and happiness. Letting go is a journey of self-love, freedom, and growth. When we dare to let go of what no longer serves our development, we will realize that our lives open up, full of opportunities and peace. Be brave to let go, not because you no longer love someone, but because you love yourself and want to create space for true growth and happiness. In the journey of letting go, one essential element is emotional understanding. When we face loss or have to let go of something valuable in life, we often feel not only sadness or disappointment, but also other complex emotions such as fear, anxiety, or even anger. The Buddha teaches that these emotions are not bad or to be avoided, but a natural part of being human. Understanding and accepting our emotions is the first step to letting go gently, no longer feeling heavy inside. When faced with loss, whether it is the passing of a loved one, the end of a relationship, or giving up a dream, we often feel like we've lost part of life. These painful emotions, though uncomfortable, are, as the Buddha teaches, an opportunity for us to understand ourselves more deeply. When we understand these emotions without reacting negatively or denying them, we will learn to accept them with calmness and compassion. The feeling of loss is one of the deepest emotions we experience in life. It can make us feel empty, lost, and sometimes unable to find a way out. But the Buddha teaches that instead of avoiding or trying to push away these emotions, we should allow ourselves to fully feel them. We don't have to hide our sadness, fear, or disappointment. These emotions are a natural part of life, and when we accept them, they will no longer control us. When we do not resist or deny them, these emotions will gradually fade and allow us to move forward. To understand our emotions, mindfulness is a wonderful method to help us face them clearly and fully. When we live mindfully, we learn to observe our emotions without being swept away by them. Instead of letting sadness or anxiety overwhelm our minds, we simply observe them like clouds passing through the sky. We can recognize that these emotions will not stay forever, just like the passing breeze. Mindfulness helps us not to drown in emotions, but simply to be aware and live them calmly. Accepting emotions is the way for us not to be haunted by them. When we do not try to change or fight against the feeling of suffering, but instead we recognize them as part of us. They will no longer cause us additional pain. The Buddha teaches that, in this acceptance, we will find liberation. Instead of trying to fill the void with external things, we need to let go of expectations and open ourselves to embrace our emotions, even if they are uncomfortable. Understanding is the first step in healing. The emotions involved in letting go can be very complex, and they may change from day to day. Some days we feel sad, while on other days we may feel angry or disappointed. But every emotion has value. They are signals that help us recognize the parts of ourselves that have not been healed, and they need to be heard and understood. When we do not react to these emotions, but simply feel them, they will help us understand ourselves better, the fears or expectations we have carried for so long. Emotions are the source of self-understanding and healing. There is a story in Buddhism about a meditator seeking peace in life. Whenever he encountered negative emotions like sadness or anxiety, he often felt ashamed because he thought a meditator should not have such emotions. But one day, his teacher told him, "You do not need to run away from your emotions. They are part of you, and only when you dare to face and understand them will you be able to overcome them." This advice helped him realize that no emotion is bad if we know how to face and understand them. When he learned to live with his emotions without rejecting them, he found deep peace within himself. The Buddha teaches that in order to truly let go, we must understand our emotions. We cannot heal if we do not understand ourselves, if we do not know what we are feeling and why we are feeling it. When we face loss or difficult emotions, we must accept that this is a natural part of the process of living. There is nothing to be ashamed of when feeling sadness, fear, or disappointment. These are part of each person's healing journey. Thus, understanding our emotions during the process of letting go is essential for achieving inner peace. Understanding does not mean that we will do everything perfectly or not feel pain, but that we learn to face and accept ourselves, even in the most difficult moments. Only when we understand can we truly let go. And when we let go, we open up space for healing and peace in life. In modern life, we often feel swept up by expectations, stereotypes, and societal norms. The image of a successful person, someone who can please everyone around them, has become the goal many of us pursue. However, the Buddha teaches that true freedom does not come from meeting those expectations, but from no longer being controlled by them, from living true to ourselves and finding happiness within ourselves. Inner freedom is not external freedom. It is not the ability to do whatever we want without worrying about the consequences. In reality, inner freedom is liberation from the constraints we impose on ourselves, the constraints created by society, family, or our own limiting thoughts. True freedom comes from not feeling the need to please anyone, no longer living in fear of what others think of us, and no longer being controlled by unrealistic expectations that we have carried throughout our lives. The Buddha teaches that we do not need to live according to what others expect. Each person has their own journey, their own path to explore and grow. When we no longer cling to those expectations, we will feel lighter, no longer carrying a burden in our hearts. Freedom is not escaping responsibility or obligation, but the freedom in how we face life, in accepting ourselves, and in living true to who we are. When we are no longer controlled by societal expectations or the expectations of others, we can find peace in our hearts. This freedom comes from accepting ourselves. The Buddha teaches that everyone has their own unique value, and happiness does not come from meeting every request or seeking recognition from others, but from loving ourselves, appreciating what we have, and living fully in each moment of life. Happiness and inner freedom are not things we can find from material possessions or external success, but are feelings that come from living true to ourselves, living with mindfulness and love. When we no longer live to please others, when we are no longer pressured by societal expectations, we will feel lighter, freer, and easily recognize that true happiness is right within ourselves. One way to build inner freedom is to practice mindfulness. When we live mindfully, we no longer get caught up in thoughts of the past or worry about the future. Each present moment becomes precious and worth appreciating. Mindfulness helps us realize that everything in life is impermanent. Nothing lasts forever. And therefore, we do not need to try to hold on to everything. Living fully in the present, without needing to meet the expectations of others, is when we achieve freedom and peace in our hearts. A story about a meditator clearly illustrates finding freedom within oneself. He was someone who always tried to please everyone, from family, friends, to colleagues. He always felt that he had to do everything well to avoid judgment. However, after starting meditation and living mindfully, he realized that he had spent too much time and energy meeting the expectations of others, forgetting that true happiness comes from living fully with himself. He began to let go of unrealistic expectations, and from there, he felt lighter and more peaceful. He was no longer afraid of being judged, no longer felt the need to be perfect in the eyes of others, but simply lived true to who he was. The Buddha teaches that inner freedom is not escaping from the world, but how we live in the world without being swept away by worries, expectations, and comparisons. Inner freedom comes from letting go of the attachments within, worries about the future, regrets about the past, and the pressure to please others. When we no longer have to live by societal standards or the expectations of others, we will find freedom within ourselves, living a meaningful and happy life. True freedom is the liberation from fear, from attachment to things that cannot be changed, and from that, we can live a life without barriers. This freedom helps us unlock our inner potential, live more creatively, and harmonize naturally with life. When we know how to love and care for ourselves, we will not feel lack or exhaustion from unrealistic expectations, and happiness will come naturally. To build inner freedom, we need to learn to live with mindfulness. Let go of worries and expectations, and love ourselves. When we do so, we will realize that happiness is not a destination, but peace within ourselves, the freedom to live fully with what we have, and the acceptance of what we cannot change. True freedom comes when we live true to ourselves and find happiness within ourselves, without needing to please anyone or pursue a perfect model set by society. Life is sometimes a long journey full of hardships, making us feel tired, anxious, and empty. The sadness, failures, and unmet expectations sometimes make our hearts heavy, as if we can no longer move forward. But deep inside, we can always find peace if we learn to let go of the mental burdens we carry. The Buddha teaches that letting go is the path to freedom, a way to liberate ourselves from anxiety and suffering in life, so that our hearts can find peace. Letting go is not giving up, but an act of self-love. It is learning not to cling to negative emotions, painful memories, or unrealistic expectations from ourselves or society. When we allow ourselves to let go, we not only free our souls from past suffering, but we also create space to receive beautiful and peaceful things. Inner peace only comes when we no longer hold on to what cannot be changed, but instead, we learn to live in the present, appreciate what we have, and love ourselves. Like a full cup, if we do not allow it to be emptied, we cannot pour more water into it. Our souls are the same. When we do not allow ourselves to let go, not creating space in our hearts, we cannot accept new things, opportunities, relationships, and joys. Letting go is the way to cleanse the soul, so that each passing day is no longer obscured by negative thoughts or painful emotions. It is the calmness in the soul that helps us see life with clearer, kinder, and more creative eyes. The key in this journey is patience with ourselves. We cannot change everything immediately, and sometimes when we feel tired, we need to forgive ourselves so we don't feel like failures. Each small step in the process of letting go is valuable because each step brings us closer to peace, to freedom in the heart. Remember, healing is a journey, not a destination. And in that journey, we learn to love and care for ourselves, open our hearts to what comes, without worrying too much about what has passed. The Buddha's teachings are not distant theories, but gentle, profound reminders about how to live rightly, how to face difficulties in life. Only when we let go can we find freedom, and this freedom brings us deep happiness that does not depend on circumstances or recognition from others. Let each day pass as an opportunity for us to let go of worries, old burdens, and find peace within ourselves. Remember, you are not alone in this journey. Each of us is seeking peace, and that peace begins from within our hearts. May you always find peace, freedom, and love in every step of your life.